The engine they tried to silence this isn't just a story about cars, engines, or high-performance machines. It's about power, the kind they don't expect to come from a young black girl in boots and braids. It's about brilliance buried beneath grease, underestimated because of who you are and where you come from. It's about courage in the face of ego and genius rising where the world only saw background noise. Today, I want to take you inside the roaring belly of Harper's garage, a place where elite machines were reborn, but where one young woman had to fight just to be seen. The very story that ends with thunderous applause and the world chanting her name begins right here in silence. Let me take you to the moment it all began, with a girl they didn't see coming and an engine no one believed could ever live again. The invisible genius in Greece, stained overalls in the heart of Harper's garage, a place where million-dollar engines screamed back to life. There was an unwritten rule: brilliance didn't always wear a uniform, but it definitely didn't wear braids and boots stained with oil. That's how Amara Briggs existed there, not as a prodigy, but as a shadow. 17 years old, razor, sharp mind, and the daughter of Harold Wrench Briggs, a veteran mechanic whose hands had built more legends than the boss himself ever acknowledged. Amara had grown up between pistons and pressure gauges, quietly mastering the art of machines her father loved. But the garage's elite crew never saw her. Not really. To them, she was just the help's daughter. A black girl playing in Greece, but beneath the surface of indifference and oil, slicked concrete, a storm was brewing, one that would challenge not just machines, but decades of arrogance. All it needed was the right spark. And that spark rolled in on 4 broken wheels. The arrival of the beast the garage fell silent the moment the truck rolled in, hauling history on its back like a wounded soldier. It was the Ford GT40, a 1965 Le Mans legend, twisted, battered, and smoking from its last breath. Collectors called it the Beast of Detroit, and now it lay crippled in Harper's domain. But it wasn't just any restoration. This car housed a prototype engine that had baffled experts from coast to coast. No one could fix it. Some claimed it defied the laws of thermodynamics. Others whispered it was cursed. Garrett Cole, the boss of the garage and self-proclaimed king of innovation, saw it as a publicity miracle or a career-ending trap. He eyed his crew like a general before war, his voice slicing through the tension. Nobody touches that engine unless you've got more brains than ego. And then he saw her, Amara, leaning in the shadows, grease on her face, curiosity in her eyes. He smirked. The dare was born that day, and so was the legend. The dare that changed everything. Garrett Cole's eyes gleamed with smug amusement as he turned toward Amara, the grease-stained girl standing too close to brilliance for his liking. The Ford GT40's prototype engine sat in the middle of the garage like a cursed crown, untouched by the trembling hands of even the most seasoned mechanics. But Amara didn't tremble. She stepped forward, not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knew. Garrett couldn't resist the opportunity. "Think you can fix what engineers 3 times your age couldn't?" he asked, loud enough for the whole garage to hear. Laughter erupted around her, but she never flinched. "I know I can," she replied, her voice a hammer against decades of doubt. That's when he made the wager. If she failed, she and her father were out. If she succeeded, he'd admit her brilliance, publicly. The room hushed. 1 second later, the deal was struck. What no one realized was that Garrett hadn't issued a challenge. He had triggered a revolution. A secret buried in steel. As the sun dipped behind the rusted roof of Harper's garage, the workers went home, leaving behind the gutted legend and a girl with something to prove. Amara stood alone with the Ford GT40, her fingers tracing the outline of the very engine others had called impossible. But it wasn't a stranger to her. As she peeled back the engine's structure, line by line, gear by gear, recognition dawned in her eyes. It was her design, modified, masked, and repackaged, but unmistakably hers. Years ago, under a pseudonym, she had submitted it to an elite engineering competition. She never heard back, no credit, no mention, until now. This was the very engine Garrett's company had claimed as a company innovation. The same engine he now dared her to fix. The irony burned, but it also clarified her mission. This wasn't about fixing a car. It was about reclaiming her stolen genius, hidden in steel and stolen by suits. And this time she wouldn't be invisible. The girl, the blueprint, and the battle within for 5 relentless days. The garage steel walls echoed with only one heartbeat. Amaris. She worked in silence, methodically, like a surgeon performing heists. Takes revival. The blueprint wasn't on paper, it lived in her memory. Each measurement burned into her brain from the nights she spent sketching her dream engine by flashlight at the kitchen table. Now she faced that very dream, twisted and scarred by someone else's theft. Every bolt she turned was a confrontation with injustice. Every recalibration, a quiet rebellion. Her fingers bled. Her eyes stung from sleep deprivation, but she didn't falter. The GT40 wasn't just a machine anymore. It was her voice, her vengeance, and her proof. She tuned it not just to run, but to roar back into a world that tried to silence her. And as the prototype neared completion, one thing was certain. Amara wasn't fixing an engine. She was preparing a reckoning. The truth beneath the hood, the final bolt, clicked into place just before dawn on the 6th day. Amara stepped back, her body aching, her spirit blazing. The engine, once dismissed as a hopeless relic, now purred like a living thing ready to race time itself. But the real ignition was yet to come. Tucked in her bag was the proof. A dusty folder with her original designs, sketches, annotations, and the old submission letter ejected and returned without explanation. It bore the same innovations now sitting beneath the GT40's hood. She'd found a signature on an internal memo to Garrett Coles. He hadn't just seen her work, he'd buried it, and now, standing face to face with the restored engine, she wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't just going to start it, she was going to expose it. The world would know the truth. That the so-called impossible engine was never broken. It had only been silenced, just like the black girl who built it. Until now, when the engine roared, so did the room. The 6th morning arrived like a drumroll. Garrett entered the garage, flanked by his investors and a small media team, expecting to witness failure, maybe even humiliation. What he didn't expect was the low, deep growl of a machine resurrected. The GT40's engine rumbled to life, smoother and stronger than ever before. Conversations halted. Coffee cups paused midair. All eyes turned to the impossible. A car that once wheezed its last breath now idled with thunder in its chest. Garrett's mouth parted, words failing him for once. How? He stammered. Amara stood beside the beast, arms folded, her face calm, unapologetic. "She was never broken," she said, nodding to the engine, "just misunderstood." The stunned silence was louder than applause. Cameras flashed. Mechanics who once mocked her now stared in awe. The sound of the engine became a symphony of just. Each revolution a reminder that brilliance can't be boxed in or bought out. The stolen blueprint exposed the moment was electric, but Amara wasn't finished. She reached into her satchel and pulled out the folder, yellowed at the edges, heavy with history. She handed it to a journalist first, not Garrett. Inside were blueprints, hand-drawn specs, and an engineering submission from 3 years ago. All of it matched the exact configuration of the GT40's prototype engine. At the bottom of one internal memo was the undeniable signature, Garrett Cole. The room turned cold. Garrett's confident posture wilted as reporters swarmed, snapping photos and demanding answers. "You built this?" one of them asked Amara. "I designed it. He took it." She didn't yell. She didn't need to. The truth landed like a hammer. Garrett fumbled for excuses, but it was too late. The narrative had shifted. She wasn't just the mechanic's daughter anymore. She was the innovator behind the legend. The engine didn't just start that day. A truth long buried roared back to life, and it shook the very ground beneath Garrett's empire. Declining the throne to build her own in the chaos that followed her reveal, Garrett scrambled. His empire teetered on scandal, and the very engine he had claimed as his company's innovation now stood as proof of his theft. So he did what powerful men do when cornered. He tried to rewrite the narrative. He offered Amara a full-time position, a lucrative contract, even public recognition, but she saw the trap behind the apology. "I don't need your seat at the table," she told him, calm and firm. "I'm building my own." The media clung to her words, and the public rallied behind her. The mechanic's daughter, once invisible in her own father's workplace, was now the face of stolen genius reclaimed. Amara turned down every check, every empty promise. She had something bigger in mind, not just revenge, but reinvention. Her dignity was never for sale, and neither was her future. Her engine had roared. Now it was time for her name to rise with it. The legacy ignites a month later. A new garage opened 6 blocks from Harper's, Briggs' Performance Lab, a name etched in chrome over tall glass doors. Inside, walls gleamed with vision boards, blueprints, and tools not just for fixing, but for innovating. Amara stood at the helm, not as an apprentice, but as a founder. Her father, Harold, now worked by her side, no longer under someone else's thumb. The space buzzed with young minds, women and men of color, kids who had been told you're too young, you're not ready, or worst of all, you don't belong here. But they belonged here because she made it so. Amara didn't just fix an engine. She redefined who gets to create, who gets to lead, and who gets to dream. And when the GT40 tore down the track at its first public race since restoration, its roar wasn't just horsepower. It was history rewritten by the girl they tried to ignore, but couldn't silence. From shadows to spotlight in the end, Amara didn't just rebuild a broken machine. She rebuilt a broken system. She proved that excellence doesn't come with a pedigree or a title. It comes with passion, precision, and purpose. She didn't take revenge, she reclaimed truth. And with every turn of that engine, with every line of blueprint that bore her signature, she redefined what it means to lead. Not by permission, but by power earned. Her journey didn't end in Garrett's garage. It started there, and what began as a dare ended in a revolution. So the next time someone tells you that you don't belong in the driver's seat, build the car, own the road, and write your name across the sky. Because Amara did, and now the world listens when she speaks. Not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. Bolt by bolt, breath by breath.